Hey guys, welcome to this new video. Today we're gonna discuss about launching and running an ESL, an education center or a teaching center in Vietnam. If you guys wanna come to Vietnam to do business in the education field, this is a must-watch video. Today we're gonna discuss about the cultural gap that you have between the foreign mindset and the local mindset here in Vietnam, pitfalls you must avoid if you plan to come here to do business, as well as all the insight and tips and lesson learned from David that is coming here today on the show. If you want to come to Vietnam to do business, check in the description and you will have my book. It's the 7 lessons and the 7 mistakes I made in Vietnam. So if you want to come here to do business, go check this out and download this book. Let's get started. Hi, David. I'm very happy to have you today to discuss about launching and running an education center in Vietnam. Can you start by introducing us your experience expatriating and doing business in Vietnam?
Definitely. So my name is David. I used to be a teacher in Vietnam. I did that for about 4 or 5 years, and I own a real estate company back home in America. And coming up to Vietnam, I decided after I got a little comfortable, wanted to try something else. 7 years in Vietnam, you kind of get bored of the teaching. So I decided to start getting into business and teaching and seeing what I could do with that. And 2 businesses later, here we are. So great adventure for sure.
So actually we make another video with David that you can find here on YouTube. You can learn more about ESL jobs in Vietnam, but in this video, I want to focus more about your experience launching and running a business center. Maybe can you start by tell us about some myths about the Asian culture, like if you come with a foreign mindset, is it easy to do business in Vietnam?
No, it's a very different world, and I'm very lucky. Growing up in my life, I grew up with Vietnamese people my whole life. My whole life was surrounded by Vietnamese and Filipinos my whole life. So I already going to Vietnam, I had a very understanding mindset of what the culture was like, maybe 60%, because Vietnam definitely is a whole different group of people compared to an American Vietnamese. But coming out there, I had to really adapt because the culture is different. The business culture in Vietnam is 100% different. It is not what you practice out here. And that was kind of the handout that I had that was a little different than most people. It's just understanding how the culture was, because the culture is the biggest part of running a business in Vietnam. You have to understand it. It's about who you know. It's not about what you have. And some of the biggest schools that you'll see in some of these areas aren't really that good, but everybody knows who they are. There's a purpose for that. That's kind of what threads into what the actual culture is.
Interesting. So basically, what's the reality of the education and what parents expect from education centers here?
You're gonna get me in trouble. So English in Vietnam is kind of a double-edged sword. It is something a lot of people want to learn because there's opportunity outside of the country of Vietnam. They can go to Europe, they go to France, they can come to America. They can go wherever they want with English. It's spoken everywhere, no matter where you go. There's somebody that can speak to you. And then there's the other side of the coin where it's about status. It's about just being in an English center. This is kind of a funny question that I like to ask when I get into any class. And let's just step back and be a teacher for a minute. When you walk into an English class, ask the students, how long have you been studying English? You're going to hear some wild numbers. People are going to say 10, 12, 13, 20 years sometimes if you're in an adult class, but they can't speak English. And it's not that the teachers sucked. It's not that the schools were bad per se. Well, I'm not going to get into that, but it's more that those people that say those numbers, it's more about just being at the restaurant, being like, I'm at ILA, I'm cool, and it's a status thing. So it really depends where you work in that respect. And I want to be careful with my words because I get in trouble with this, but where you work can really define what the purpose is of that English school, being a public school, I'll keep it at that word, or a private school that's a center.
In terms of the mindset of the parents, how would they expect the English center to be run? Like, is it really like diploma oriented? It's like I pay something, I want to get my diploma. Is it the mindset that we have here?
Diploma, yeah, definitely. It is all about that paper. That's kind of a funny thing. The second school that we opened, we failed about 30% of the students, and it turned into hell with the parents. And the whole part of the inspired school was you earned what you had, and we did our best to make sure people passed. It wasn't like, we don't like you, you're going to fail. So when parents come in paying their money for these schools, or if the parents themselves are coming into the school as a student, they expect to get that paper. They expect to speak English in the next like 27 minutes. That's kind of where the misconception comes in, though, is learning a new language is very hard. And you'll have students that spend 12 years in school from first grade all the way up to 12th grade into university studying English, but never really speak it. But when they get into your center, if anybody opens a center, they expect those results really fast. And past the actual fast results, it's supposed to be kind of a daycare, if that makes sense. It's very normal for schools to play a lot of games. If you're a Western teacher, you'll hear the schools tell you a lot. Be like, David, play more games, because it's an entertainment value almost. We're almost like daycare people to some extent, especially when you get to these bigger like international schools. You almost are a daycare center, and English is secondary, even though it's an English school. So this one, I always tell people to kind of find out what the school is. Again, I can't name some of these because I have affiliates with some of them, so I don't want to get in trouble, but ask, find out what the school is doing. Ask the teachers how the classes are before you work at these jobs, and you'll know in the conversations if this is a as we say in China, like a white monkey job where they just hire you for the face, or is this actually education? So it's a hit and miss kind of a thing. But again, what the parents expect is pretty much you to entertain them and teach them English as fast as possible and give them that diploma.
Interesting. So if you guys wanna be an English teacher, do your own due diligence, ask other maybe foreigners who are already teaching here to kind of benchmark a little bit the options you have here. David, I want to focus on about your entrepreneurship journey as well. So you run 2 English centers, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, where did you open it? Did you do it with a partner? And how was basically the ending of that entrepreneurship journey?
So I feel living in Vietnam, and I write this in the book that I wrote. It's the 4 stages of being in Vietnam. You first get there and you're kind of like excited, like, oh, this is so cool. Look at all this stuff. Look how cheap beer is. Like, everything is awesome. And then you kind of start getting adapted to it. And then you start becoming a little more calm to the driving and the honking. And then after a while, you just become a Vietnamese person. Like, you really just accept everything and you become part of it, and you start justifying it almost. And once you get to that 4th stage, that's where I started thinking, I don't want to be a teacher no more. I want to do something else. Like, how can I make a bigger impact? And that's when I started a school called ASD, American Standard Education or Development, sorry. And the whole point of that was to try to, like, we were opened up in Bien Thanh, and the whole idea was to help make a school that helped educate, but it focused on English and advanced English. And it was a fast program. So it was 3 to 6 months. You were speaking some pretty good English, like much better than any other center. That was our mission statement, per se. How we did it, though, in Vietnam, as a non-citizen, you cannot own a company. You can't even own more than 49% stock. There's a stock company in Vietnam called SSI, and I own a good amount of stock through that company. They're my broker, and nothing I can own is past 49%. This is just how the government works. You are not allowed to. So when you want to open a company, you do need a Vietnamese person that's actually going to own your company. You're just going to be the co-owner. And once you get that done, that lets you open up it and kind of just showed you, oh, where to go. So ideally, I got to be careful not to show you everything, but this is kind of what you would get. Maybe I'll send you an image, but this is an example of what you would see for the actual business permit, once you get it done. So once you get to this stage, you are pretty much free to practice. And opening a school for anybody trying to do it, there are 2 ways to do it. One, you can open a center permit, which takes you about a week to do. It's a very fast process. It costs about $50, and you can open a house into a school. This is what I did in Bien Thanh. It was very easy, very simple, and we went from there. Inspired, this company right here, why I have this paper, is an actual business. So if we think of schools like ILA or VUS, these are the same type of business permits. They can open up anywhere in Vietnam, and that's what we did with this one. It's just, unfortunately, with the pandemic, I couldn't expand past someone building a login. So to answer the question in short, you do need a partner. It needs to be somebody you trust. You really have to trust the person, because they can take everything from you. And not legal advice, but just personal advice. If they come after you, try to take what you've made with them, you will not win. I guarantee you will lose that fight. So have somebody you trust. The first partner I had was actually an uncle of a friend of mine that actually lives in America. So if he tried to cheat me, there would be problems to pay. And the second one was just a long friend that I've had for 8 years in Vietnam, and it was a great decision. She's to this day not cheating me on it. She still runs the school as an online school right now.
To give a little bit more context about this, so basically, if you want to open your company in Vietnam, you can either work with someone who is Vietnamese, so the company will be owned by that nominee, for basically, or you can go through the direction of opening a 100% foreign-owned company. But usually, the business sectors are limited if you want to be 100% in control of your company. That's why maybe to get started, sometimes it's better to directly find a local partner. So maybe it can be a friend, a girlfriend, I mean, someone that you can partner with to get things faster. So what about the myth about launching an ESL center in Vietnam? Is it easy? You mentioned it already. It's not that easy, and it's better to have a local partner here. Can you do paperwork by yourself? And then what about the delivering diploma aspect as well? I guess you have some kind of process to go through to be able to be eligible to deliver those diploma.
Yeah, my Vietnamese writing is horrible. So I definitely we had to hire somebody to help us out with the paperwork itself. And we hired a lawyer. My advice, if you're going to try to open a school, is to work in Vietnam for a couple of years and jump around. Go to Saigon to be a teacher. Go to Hanoi to be a teacher. Go to Lai Châu. Go to Pha Tinh. Learn the culture of what is wrong. When I opened my schools, I opened it not trying to be another school. I opened it to fix those problems that I saw. So that's what made our schools different. And my last school I opened, Inspire, that was the whole point, was to do something different for the country, for the kids. So they were learning something and they weren't paid money to just play games, you know? So my advice is be a teacher for a while. Don't just jump in and be like, oh, I can do this easy. Because I've seen a lot of people open schools. I think I know about 4 or 5 people that have tried to open schools in Saigon and Hanoi that were Westerners that didn't get the culture. I knew a friend of mine, he was half Vietnamese. He was an American guy, and he opened one and it didn't do too good because he assumed that because he was Vietnamese that he understood the culture of that country, but he is an American Vietnamese. And again, they're two different type of people. And so if you're going to open it, learn the culture first. The culture is more important than the money. It's way more important. If you don't know how to use it and run it, your money's useless. You're just going to throw it. You're just going to start throwing it away, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, every time people ask me like, how long I should spend in Vietnam before starting a business, I always recommend them to spend at least 6 months to 1 year to really kind of get to understand the market, find probably some business partners to work with. And then after that, you can really kind of start to invest and really get started into your entrepreneurship journey. You didn't mention about the diploma aspect. How is it in terms of licensing to be able to kind of package a diploma and be able to provide it?
Yeah, so kind of roll back real quick, like you were just saying, if you're going to start a business or whatever it is, do that job for a while and learn it. If you want to work as an engineer, work in some oil companies. You want to be a teacher, work as a teacher for a while. And the diplomat part, the certifications, the way we did it is we created one. So we designed it. I had my staff kind of help me out. So we made something that was really appealing and, kind of held down the concept of the company. And we used the actual stamp. I think I showed you before, but like this right here, I'll try to put a zoom in on it. But this is the actual stamp of, look at that, of the actual company. So we just had the certificate and then we would stamp it, and that would be our certification. And then we had like an ID number. So if they want to call and verify it. But ideally, you're talking about diplomats. Most of the time that stuff doesn't really matter as long as it's there. And kind of ideally, like documents can be faked a lot in Vietnam. So it's really difficult, I guess, sometimes to get that done. I don't know if I'm making sense on this part, but when we had the school, we did have certificates. So if you're going to open a school, you should have some kind of certificate, definitely. And it should be something that follows the British, the process of like IELTS or any of that stuff. Like our degree actually had like, I don't have it with me, but like on the corner, it would say like IELTS and have like the British certification number, because we had a certification number for the IELTS to give the test out. So you do need one. Yeah, you should have one. They expect it. If you go to school and say, yeah, you're just going to learn English, we're not going to give you nothing for it, but you're going to pay us money, you're going to have a hard time. And that comes back to just with the cultures. They love to have stuff. The best advice I give anybody when they open a new school is buy a bunch of backpacks and shirts and give them away. That will bring in more customers than having a good good staff or a good school or a pretty building. They want stuff for free, and that will attract it.
So what about the cost now? Like, how is it, let's say, if someone wanna get, like, I don't know, rent a small house and have, I don't know, 2-3 classes per day, and then scale it to maybe 10-15 classes per day. Can you give an idea about, I don't know, the renting cost per month of a typical English center?
It depends what you buy. You see those ILA buildings. That's a good example because there's such big buildings in Vietnam, or in Saigon at least. Those buildings are probably running a couple $100 million a month, which is like $7,000 to $15,000 US a month. If you are starting a school where you're going to have 2 or 3 classes, you could probably get away with like 10 to 12 million a month, which is like $500 or $600 a month, because you just need a 2 or 3 bedroom house. And if you're living in the school, which is kind of common when you're opening it up, you just have like a bedroom in the back. Ideally, your startup for rent, though, I would say plan about $1,000 a month would be a good number, and avoid agents. Do not talk to Vietnamese agents, say they can give you a deal on a house. Talk to the owners. I did a video about how to actually get houses as a Western person as a cheap rate. Because a lot of every house I've had in Vietnam has been huge, but I've paid a lot less than what you probably pay right now. But it's just about knowing the right people. So I would say ideally though, have at least $1,000 planned in your budget per month for what you're trying to get, because you're only going to need 2 or 3 actual rooms. And if it's just you as a teacher, you only need 2.
So what about now getting started? And let's say if you want to find your first customer, like, do you ask friends? Is it like you're going to get some referral? Is it you're going to start maybe doing some lessons for free, and then kind of build an audience and have parents after referring you other kids?
Word of mouth is the biggest thing. I think, well, that's the second biggest thing. The first one is, again, my advice at the beginning of your video here was, how do you start a school? You become a teacher for a few years and you figure it out. Make friends with the parents, you're going to have students that are high school kids or secondary kids. Make friends with them. In Asia, it's not normal. In Asia, it's normal to have friends that are 50 years old as like talking, English partners. That's a very normal thing. Here in America, if you do that, they think you're crazy. But in Asia, that's a normal thing. So take advantage of those relationships and use them. So when we opened the first school, ASD, we had a lot of our friends come in as students, and a lot of them we made the deal. Like, if you bring a friend in, we'll give your friend half off and I'll make you free. So we would have 1 or 2 friends bring in like 8 people, and that would be a class. And then those 8 people went around talking about, yeah, go to this English center with this American guy. He's crazy. And they loved it. And more people came. And then those people were like, yeah, you know what? Since they told you, we'll give you 25% off. And then eventually we got to that normal pricing. And after like a year and a quarter, I didn't give discounts. I didn't ask people to help me. Word of mouth was my biggest marketer tool at that point. And I will say this one thing, and I see Vietnamese people do this all the time. So if you're Vietnamese at the school, take this advice because it'll help you. Do not waste your money on TV marketing. Do not waste your time sending people to stores and attacking people saying, join our English center. Get customers, get your friends in there, and just bring them in there. It is cheaper to give 5 or 6 kids a free class of English than it is to spend $800 on a bunch of backpacks and go to a store and throw them at people saying, join this English school. We have a Western person. That it just, nobody cares. They just want your free stuff. So the best way, start off with the people you know. If you're open to English center, be a teacher and use those relationships. When I opened that first school, I had a lot of parents that were my friends. We used to go out to restaurants, we go out to bars, we do everything together. So when I said I opened an English center, the first thing out of their mouth is, can I send my kid there? And that's what it was. And they even paid. They weren't asking for freebies or hookups. They were just like, I trust you more than I trust them. And that is the key part of Vietnam culture. It's about who you know. It's about relationships. So when you figure that out, the business life is easy in Vietnam. It's super easy.
And the fact that here in Vietnam, people tend to be super online, super connected. You see kids very early, they have smartphones, even parents, everyone is kind of connecting on social network. Do you think the importance of digital here would be like a must have if you want to, maybe not the first months, but after, if you really want to scale and grow, 2-3 classes English center to something that is like 10-15 classes per day English center?
You can. So Inspired, actually, I still have 2 Vietnamese teachers that work in Vietnam for me, and they do online because of the pandemic. It's an awesome way for them to make money because they can't leave their house. But online schooling is not looking good right now. You can statistically looking at what schools like ILA was doing, EMG actually tried to pull this off too. They all failed. They failed horribly. And to the point where they just started losing teachers. So online schooling in Vietnam, I think is going to be a while. The people aren't ready for it. Yeah, everybody has an iPhone. Yeah. But those iPhones are for TikTok. They're not for education. They're not for learning. They're not for anything else but TikTok and games. So will English do better? It'll take time. The classes online that we offer right now through the school that's in Lazi, like I think we have like 70 students, and it's hard to keep them. It really is, because they're always like, I don't feel like I'm busy, you know, but they're just sitting at home. It's the idea that they don't like to do it. As soon as these schools, these centers open back up, you're going to see a huge flood of schools demanding Western teachers just because of this, because the online just did not work. I'm not saying it's not going to work in the future, but during this pandemic, these massive schools tried it and they all failed. They failed horribly.
I thought like a school would have catch up quite fast and would have find, I don't know, tools or way to have the kids, you know, being able to really spend time on some specific apps. But I didn't know it was like that challenging for teachers to keep the kids, you know, entertained while having the lessons.
It wasn't so much the teachers. This isn't a teacher fault. Don't get that wrong. This is a culture thing. And some of the biggest complaints that were coming around, and talking to a lot of my friends that were teachers that were hearing these complaints, was a lot of parents didn't want to have their kids at home all day doing stuff online. Now we got to buy another phone. Now we got to give up our phone for our kid to use it. And I know this sounds like me attacking the parents, and I'm not, but I am. But the responsibility for it was not there. And the fact that also the schools that were doing the online, especially the public schools, they were just throwing all the schoolwork at the parents, saying, you do everything and we'll grade you later. And the parents were like, no, this is stupid. I'm not a teacher. And that was the idea of what online school was for a lot of people. So a lot of people fought back. Saigon was one of the bigger areas that fought back. The parents were like, we're done. We're not doing this. Phan Thiet had a big backlash with it. So online schooling happening soon. It'll happen when the culture's ready for it. But right now, and it proved during COVID, because COVID was the best time to do it. You can't leave. The government would literally put you in jail if you're outside. So this was the best time, and it just flopped because the schools didn't know how to set it up. They forced it on people. They didn't know how to even do it. I mean, you think about it, in America, we have University of Harvard, University of Washington, University of Phoenix, all online universities that work. Vietnam hasn't got there yet. So I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. Online classes are still going to stay kind of small and private at most.
Last word for you, David. So building an ESL center or an education center, trap or opportunity?
Loaded question. I think it's worth it if your heart's in the right spot. Don't go in it thinking it's all about the money. If you're in there to get rich, like a lot of Vietnamese people open companies just to get rich. They take opening a school, make them rich real fast. And that is sadly the truth. I know a lot of owners of these schools, and all they talk about is how much money they made. So if your heart is there to actually improve the people, I was there to improve the education. That was my goal. That is still my goal. That's why this company is still open. That's why we have if you go to inspire.edu.vn, the site's kind of goofed up right now, but we're still there. And we're still working. So if your heart is in the right spot and you are determined to do this, and this is your mission, you wrote it on your fridge as a mission statement, this is the biggest and the best way you can go, and you will profit. If you're out there to make a big bag real quick and a big dollar, you're going to flop, and it's a trap. 100%.
Okay, thank you, David, for your insights and you sharing about that entrepreneurship experience. I was quite excited to get your feedback about this. I will leave in the description a few links, so if you want to learn more about business in Vietnam or opportunities, or just connect so we can exchange more about this, feel free to check in the description. If you have questions for David, also check and leave a comment, and we can continue together the discussion. Thanks, David, for your time.
Thank you, sir. Tom be it. Have a good night.
And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Been down and I'ma get it right. Dead on sight like